Hello, I'm Krissy. I'm going to be sharing with you today my thoughts about the next line in the Lord's Prayer. So, over the last few weeks, we've already talked about Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the next line, which is Give us today our daily bread. So I don't know what that line makes you think of. Maybe a nice home-cooked sourdough loaf or something that's not food at all. For me, it makes me think of, or one of the things it makes me think of is a story in the Old Testament, which is in Exodus 16. So it's just after Moses has led the people of Israel out of Egypt where they were slaves, which a lot of you will know. And these people who've been through already so many trials and hardships and have seen amongst that trial and hardships have seen so many signs and miracles from God and have been provided for by God in amazing ways. So after all that, they find themselves in what's described as the wilderness, and another really hard time for them. And they are hungry and they are miserable and they're complaining to Moses and to God that they don't have enough to eat. And what follows is this amazing miracle of provision from God, where every day they wake up and they see bread. There is enough bread for them to eat for that day, that has literally come from heaven. They call it manna, and it's incredible. But one of the things that's really special about this bread, apart from the fact that it's just come down from heaven, is that God tells them to gather what they need for that day only, and not to try and hoard up more than they need for that day. So they go, and some of them do, they gather more than they need for that day and they try and store it up overnight, and it goes rotten. It's not good to eat the next day. But every day they wake up and there's enough for that day for all of them to eat well and for their needs to be met for that day. And so going back to the Lord's Prayer, where Jesus teaches us to pray, give us this day our daily bread. It just reminds me of that idea that these people of Israel were not taught to go out and gather all that they need and store it up like they're hibernating and expecting a really hard winter to come where they're going to need all these supplies stacked up for them. No, Jesus teaches us to pray, give us this day our daily bread. Just enough for today. It's not a long list of requests or demands. Kind of like Kate mentioned in last week's video, it's not a shopping list of all the things we need. It's a basic, simple request for the very thing we need to survive, our daily bread. And it's just enough, like the manna that was provided for the people of Israel. We don't need to worry about stashing or storing away the things that God gives us. Actually, this prayer teaches us that every day God will provide for our needs, and we can trust in that provision, that our daily needs will be met and we don't have to worry about tomorrow, what tomorrow will bring, what the day after, or the year after will bring. We can just trust wholly in that provision. And I don't think that God is stingy, that God only provided that day's bread, and that Jesus only teaches us to pray for what we need today for just enough because God's stingy or God doesn't have enough to provide. I know from my own experiences, I have a lot of examples in my own life where I've been praying for something, and actually God's provided abundantly more than I've needed or that I've asked for, and it's been amazing. And I'm sure a lot of you might have experiences of that. So it's not that God's stingy or that God doesn't want to bless us and give us abundantly more than we can imagine, but it's just about this trust that Jesus is teaching us, that we can trust that we don't have to worry that we won't have enough, but we can trust that every day God will come through for us and God will provide. Charlie talked in the very first video about God as nurturer. I love that image of God as nurturer, like our mum or dad or our caregiver, that as babies and young children, we are completely reliant on our mum or dad or our caregiver to meet our basic needs, to make sure we've got enough food and water, make sure our nappies are changed, all of these things. We are completely reliant on them and dependent, and we have this innate trust. You know, it's one of the really early things that children develop is trust in an adult, because we have to know that there's someone who is looking after us, who has our best interests in mind, and knows our needs and will provide for them. And in the same way, Jesus teaches us in this prayer, in this line, give us this day our daily bread, to have that same trust and reliance on God that babies have on their parents, to meet their basic needs, that we don't have to be consumed by worry or fear of what the future might bring or whether we will have enough, because Jesus is teaching us to have this trust, to have that reliance and that dependence on God, that our needs will be met, that sometimes our needs will be provided for abundantly more than we can ask or imagine, and that every day we can know innately, deep in our core, that God's looking out for us and that God will come through for us and provide for us. So I really hope that encourages you. It really encourages me, and it really makes me less fearful about each day and about what's going to come in the future. It's not just about food and bread, you know, it's about all the things that we feel we're lacking, and that we need in life. And it's just so reassuring and deeply encouraging to know that God is there each day. God is there for us, and God is listening and wants to provide for those things that we feel we're lacking and that we need each day. So I hope that blesses you, and look forward to whoever is sharing in next week's video for the next line of the Lord's Prayer.